Wow, do I have an interesting story for you guys today. The Republicans in the House of Representatives will vote on a bill that would completely defund and eliminate the IRS and get rid of the income tax and replace it with a consumption tax. Now, what is a consumption tax, you might be wondering? Well, I'm going to go into all the details of what that could mean, and you're probably going to want to stick around to the end of this video because I have a special key piece of information that could impact your taxes for 2023. Without further ado, let's dive in. Okay, guys, so what is consumption tax exactly? A consumption tax is a tax that is levied on the consumption spending of goods and services. Okay, so let's talk about this because this is really new. Examples of consumption taxes are sales tax and value-added taxes. So in other words, instead of taxing you on the income that you make every single year, the newly proposed alternative would be to tax you on the money that you spend on certain items every year. Now, here are some of the details that I want to make sure that I cover in this video with this new proposed bill. The new proposed bill that would abolish the IRS and the income tax is called the Fair Tax Act. It was proposed by Representative Buddy Carter, a Republican from Georgia, and the emergence of this Fair Tax Act apparently came as the result of the deal made with newly appointed Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy, a Republican from California, and the House Freedom Caucus. Now, as many people are aware, the voting process to elect a new speaker after Nancy Pelosi stepped down was quite complicated. In fact, it took 15 votes to elect Kevin McCarthy as the new speaker. It seems that the Fair Tax Act must have been at the center of some of the drama regarding the speaker vote. In addition to getting rid of the personal income taxes, the bill would also get rid of corporate income taxes. Further, the bill would do away with death tax, gift tax, and payroll taxes. This is starting to stack up. Now, many might view this as a response to the Inflation Reduction Act. It seems that the Fair Tax Act, which is pushed by the Republicans, is a response to the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022, which appropriated additional funding for the IRS to the tune of $80 billion over the next decade. Now, a portion of the $80 billion of the IRS funding that was approved in the Inflation Reduction Act was earmarked for thousands of new IRS agents, with some reports citing up to 87,000 new tax agents and auditors. However, these reports have been conflicting, with some saying that there are far fewer hired and that many of the new IRS agents that will get hired will be replacing a lot of those who will be leaving due to retirement. Nonetheless, apparently many Republican lawmakers were unhappy with the massive increase in IRS spending that was created during the Inflation Reduction Act, and they chose to respond with this bill. House Republicans also voted earlier in the week to get rid of most of the new funding for the IRS that was added in the Inflation Reduction Act. So, how much would this new consumption tax be, you may ask? Well, the new consumption tax proposed in the Fair Tax Act would range from 0% to 30% based on how much you spend in a given month and what your income is. This new tax is designed not only to be easier to understand and to deal with for taxpayers, but also to make up for 100% of the federal government's revenue that would be lost from the abolishing of income taxes. Now, supposedly, the Fair Tax Act includes a rebate of $250 to $500 that everyone would get in accordance with their family size. This would be the equivalent of the standard deduction in today's tax code. Now, the rebate would offset the sales tax entirely for Americans who are living at the poverty line. So essentially, under the Fair Tax Act, federal taxes would be paid in the same way that many taxes are paid at the state and local levels, at the cash register at the time of the sale. Now, one of the questions you might be asking is, how would the Fair Tax Act affect the economy? Would it be a positive thing? Would it be a negative thing? And how soon will we be able to see the impact? It is safe to say that the Fair Tax Act would dramatically change the entire economy. All of a sudden, the prices at stores would dramatically increase. That would most likely result in many companies having to make significant changes to their business models in order to adapt to the new tax system. And there also is the possibility that it could change consumer behavior in general. I mean, after all, if prices for a wide variety of goods and services were suddenly 20 to 30% higher, which they kind of feel like that right now, then it might cause millions of people to spend less money. However, the other side of the coin is that Americans would actually have significantly more money to spend since they would not have to pay federal income taxes. So the bottom line is that it's difficult to predict exactly how this new tax system would affect the economy. But if people didn't have to file tax returns every year, then it could cut out a lot of their stress. After all, for the average person who isn't a tax professional, even just trying to fill out tax returns in a way that complies with the over 80,000 pages of the tax code can be extremely difficult. Now, the next thing you might be wondering is, will this bill actually become law? This bill seems to have very strong support from Republicans in the House right now. However, it is doubtful that the bill would get the support it would need in the Democrat-controlled Senate. Also, the White House has already opposed the bill, so they're aware of what's going on. Despite the fact that many Republican lawmakers seem to be enthusiastic about this bill, it's unlikely to actually become law anytime soon. Instead, this bill seems to be something of a symbolic expression or a political statement about how Republicans feel about the Inflation Reduction Act, giving further power to the IRS, and about how they feel about the IRS in general. Now, the Fair Tax Act proposal and vote also comes hot on the heels of the widely publicized release of Donald Trump's tax returns, which greatly angered many Republicans. So it would seem that this vote might be sort of a retaliation for both the release of the Trump tax returns and for the Inflation Reduction Act's dramatic increase of the IRS budget. However, there are also many people in the country and apparently many people in Congress who feel that the IRS is unnecessary and that the US would be better off without it. Let's talk a little bit about the history of the IRS, because a lot of people seem to think that the IRS was created at the same time our country was created or something, and that's just not true. The IRS was actually created in July 1st, 1862. So the United States existed for almost a whole century before it started using the IRS to collect taxes, in case you didn't know. Prior to the creation of the IRS, the federal government generated revenue primarily through tariffs and excise tax. Tariffs and excise tax. In fact, the personal income taxes wasn't even created until July 2nd of 1909. So history has proven that it is possible for Americans to exist and for the federal government to generate enough revenue to function without imposing an income tax on the American people and without income taxes as a whole. So, I mean, does this mean that the United States is better off without the IRS and income taxes? Well, that is up for debate. You guys can let me know in the comments. But what would the passing of the Fair Tax Act in the House mean for you? Essentially, right now, it wouldn't mean anything because it has not become law yet. So you can keep on paying your taxes as you have been. The IRS is still alive and well, and there's still a very good chance that it will come after you if you don't pay your taxes. So with that being said, the passing of this bill in the House would open the door for major changes to be made to the IRS in the next few years. For example, it is possible that the funding that was approved by the Inflation Reduction Act could actually end up getting removed. Also, if Republicans gain control of the Senate and the White House in the next election cycle, then it's possible that the Fair Tax Act or something similar to it could become law and the IRS could actually be going away. But right now, for now at least, things will remain as they are, which means you still need to do your taxes, and don't forget that. All right, guys, that's it for this video. I hope you liked it. If you want to learn a little bit more about reducing your taxes like the wealthy, then feel free to check out my courses, Tax Alchemy. You can find the link to the course below in the description. Stay tuned for more helpful tax videos. I look forward to seeing you guys on the next one. Cheers.